Okay guys, I'm going to make a series of videos, or a video. We're going to see how many this ends up being about working some of your problems in Chapter 3. I'm not going to work every problem in the exercises because I do know that you have access to those answers in the back of the book. If you haven't found those yet, you can flip to your table of contents and you can see answers to odd number chapter exercises begins on page 363. So as you're navigating through the chapter, reading through it, and working the exercises, you have the ability to check yourself on the odd number exercises. And so I may choose an odd number exercise or I may choose an even number exercise. So hopefully you are working through both. So remember that your chapter starts off with the inpatient census, or the head in the bed census, that goes over the amount of patients that are in your facility at census taking time. Then the chapter moves on to daily inpatient census and inpatient service days, so which are variations on the actual head in the bed census. So if you're taking a look at page 34 on exercise 3.1, you have quite a bit of questions that are asking you about transfers and what if a patient moves around, what the counts have been different, and all that kind of good stuff. So pretty much what you're starting here with is just a referral back to the first couple of pages in the chapter, so which all deal with head in the bed. So I'm going to pick up at daily inpatient census and inpatient service days in that area. So we're going to just go ahead and get started with exercise 3.2, and I'm going to jump in to problem number 1, which says the census at 12:01 a.m. on June 1st is 110. 3 patients were admitted on June 1 at 6 a.m. and discharged later that day. 1 patient admitted at 6 a.m. died at 5:30 p.m. the same afternoon. What is that PCU's daily inpatient census for June the 1st? And so the information is there for you to calculate that, but it's written in a word problem. I don't like word problems. I'm sure you don't like them either, but guess what? Sometimes we have to work out word problems. So I'm going to scoot this in here and I'm going to show you how I work this out. So when you are calculating the census, you know to calculate the census, you've got to have the number of admissions, the number of discharges, and the things like that that have happened in the hospital or on the unit that day. So if we're looking at 3.2, number 1, your starting census that your textbook tells us about is 110. Right? So we've got 110 as our starting or beginning census from the night before. And that, oh, look at me. Look, y'all. Trying to write, talk, and spell. CNSUS. So 110 is your starting census. And to that, you would add any admissions that you have, and you're going to subtract any discharges that you have. Number 1 doesn't go over that. It talks about admissions and discharges, or A and Ds, as is discussed later in the chapter. So if you're like, okay, that's discussed later, so why are we doing something now? But on page 40, if you watch the other video where I lectured about, where I was lecturing about the chapter, you probably saw where we went over A and Ds. So just know that with the daily inpatient census, you are also looking for A and Ds of people that have been admitted and discharged between consecutive census taking times. And so while students are learning how to calculate census, I'm probably prone to more information than less information. So our word problem told us nothing about admissions, right? And later on, I'm going to abbreviate that to ADM. So I put a +0 as a placeholder, because if that PCU would have had admissions, the word problem would have told us, and we would have added them in there. It also didn't say anything about discharges, right? But it did tell us about A and Ds. And remember from page 40, and if you'll flip over, I'm not going to move it over, but A and Ds are those people that came into your facility and left in between census taking times, and you have to account for them. And you account for them in the daily inpatient census instead of the head in the bed census. And so it says in problem 1 that we've got 3 patients were admitted on June 1 at 6 a.m. and discharged later that day. So I'm going to add those plus 3, right? So they were admitted and they were discharged before the next census taking time. Also, the problem indicates that you had 1 patient that was admitted and died that afternoon. So we're going to add that person, and I'm going to call it an admission and a death. I'm going to abbreviate it. So the reality is that these two numbers are the same, right? Death is the ultimate form of discharge. I know that your textbook references that too, but we treat death as a discharge. So they're listed separately as a death because for statistical purposes, we have to categorize them to be able to count them, to use them in death rates. So they are a discharge at the time of death. So when you take all this and you have 110 plus 0 minus 0 plus 3 plus 1, your answer should be 114. And so that number is your daily inpatient census. And that number represents everyone that received treatment in your facility on that particular day during and in between census taking time. So it captures everyone. So that's number 1. So let's go on to number 3, since you had to work that one too, or you had access to that one in the back, because number 2 is just mostly about a definition. So number 3 says community hospital census at 12:01 a.m. was on September 19th was 327. On that day, 12 patients were admitted and 10 patients were discharged. Calculate the inpatient census for September the 19th. I probably could have moved that over, but we're right here on number 3. All right? So again, I'm going to let you in on how I calculate this. And I make a lot of notes and I write a lot of things down. Now, if you got this and you're calculating it in your head, that's fine. But when or if you are taking a test or a quiz, I'm going to get you to set it up for me as a part of your answer so I can essentially see kind of like a show your work type of thing. Alrighty, so let's go back to number 3. Let's see here. Our starting census was 327, right? So that's the start. And to that, our textbook says 12 patients were admitted. So we're going to add the 12 admissions, right? So I'm going to do ADM. It says also that 10 patients were discharged. So I'm going to subtract 10 patients. And, oops, let me make sure I write that down. Discharges. It doesn't say anything else for the rest of the day, right? So no A&Ds, no nothing, but guess what? The problem asks for the inpatient census. So if any admission, if any A&Ds had been recorded, they wouldn't apply here because this is the head in the bed census. All right. So that answer should, if we've done everything right, come up to 329. So this one was the DIPC. This one was the inpatient census. No A&Ds. If there were any A&Ds in that word problem, we would not have counted them there because we are looking at the head in the bed census, not the daily inpatient census. And so if you're confused about that, it's perfectly normal. The nomenclature for these two sounds so similar, and it's confusing as to why they're two different numbers. And really the only difference is one does not require the people who came and went in between census taking time, or the A&Ds, while one does. Okay, so I'm going to pop back over to your textbook, and let's talk about inpatient service days. And I went over this in the prior video, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, that for inpatient service days, the DIPC is the same mathematically calculated number. Okie dokie. So I am going to pause this one and pick back up with another video in just a minute. Hopefully this helps you see how I kind of organize myself when it comes to calculating census. For some of your worksheets and extra work, you'll find that sometimes I will post the answers, and so for you to see kind of how I have that written down ahead of time may be helpful. So I'll see you in the next video.